By the request of some members of my community, I finally give you this as a sacrifice so you don't throw spoons at me. So you want to main 7. Well, do you like balls? Do you like stuns? Do you like eating electrical wires? Do you like Mob of the Dead from Black Ops 2? Do you like being the storm that is approaching? And do you like ultimates? Then 7, the Death Row Mystic, is for you.
When mystic energy awoke on Earth, the world changed. Anything was possible. But just because anything was possible didn't mean that anything should be possible. And so the government made rules, laws, a means for us citizens to enjoy the benefits of the supernatural world in safety. But rules and laws are for lesser men with limitations, men who are not 7. There are many rumors about what 7 did to land himself in Lost Whisper, an oubliette for the most dangerous of occultists. But there is no doubt about what happened on the night of his execution. Wards placed by the most powerful ritualists of 7 different nations. Wards designed to not just prevent mystical interference with the execution, but to simultaneously obliterate 7's soul so that it could never be contacted, resurrected, or otherwise be used by someone looking to follow in his footsteps. Failed. Onlookers viewed in horror as the strongest mentalist employed by the US Army's head popped like a grape. They screamed as Scotland Yard's premier occult investigator, the one who allegedly captured 7, crumbled to ash. 7's body buckled and writhed against his restraints, his skin burning from eldritch electricity. And yet he would not die. He laughed. He laughed as he tore himself free from his bondage. He laughed as his captors cowered in fear. He laughed as he massacred his tormentors. He laughed as he tasted the fresh air that was denied to him for years. And he laughed when he thought about what he was going to do once he reached New York City.
7, 7, 7. When it comes to this character, he's arguably one of the best written characters in Deadlock. If not the best, then a solid top 3 in my eyes. 7's history before he got locked up in Lost Whisper is as much as a mystery as he is. Through contextual clues and conversation with the other cast members, however, there is one thing to know for sure, and that is 7's pure, unfiltered hatred for Kelvin.
Don't worry, Kelvin, I won't let you die.
I thought you hated me.
I do, but if anyone is going to kill you, it's going to be me.
I mean, same buddy, every time I play against Kelvin I want to shoot myself. Moving on. But as many other more qualified people in the Deadlock community pointed out before me, 7 and Kelvin have history, and from the looks of things, a very dark one. 7 had to, in his words, scurry with the rats. Hi, hello, Editing Azura here. I need to correct something real quick. It wasn't scurry with the rats, it was scurry like a rat. Turns out whoever decided to transcribe the voice line on the Deadlock wiki did it incorrectly. Shit. As a child to make sure he survived, he studied the astral gates with credit to Dynamo, the same man who had his body obliterated by said astral gates. The same man where his interaction with 7 gives some very interesting insights into 7's opinions on close ties.
I don't understand you, Professor. You've been bestowed a great gift, and you're willing to throw it all away for nothing.
Easy words to say when you've never loved someone.
No. Easy words to say when you have.
There is one thing that 7 is, it's intelligent. How he conducts himself, alongside him constantly seeking more knowledge and power, is akin to a scholar, not allowing anything regarding the law, nor, in his words, inept government, to stop him and his goal, completing the ritual and achieving apotheosis.
So what do you do?
Strive for apotheosis.
That's a big word.
Indeed.
What's it mean?
Once we summon the patron, you'll see for yourself.
Which, for those that want to know, is essentially him wanting to become either a god or a godlike being. Which makes perfect sense for a character like 7. He's a man with what seems to be nothing to lose and everything to gain. In-game, 7 is a position 1 spirit hyper carry. Like Wraith, his job is to power farm to the late game and run the late game with absolute dominance. 7 is probably the most well-known hyper carry in Deadlock, with everyone threatening over being obliterated by a late game storm cloud that will fry basically anyone that doesn't immediately get out of line of sight. He might not be the greatest character in the early game, but when it comes to his ability to generate souls and farm, he's bar none one of the best characters in the game to do so. All of his abilities in some sense or another do AoE damage, and it makes farming almost second nature to 7. So in one singular phrase to describe 7, it would be Spirit Damage Monster. 7 is not turbo squishy like Mina, so you can take some hits in the early game and dish it back out. But how does he achieve this, you may ask? Well, let's do our usual thing and go over 7's kit. Starting off with his weapon, Cold Calculus. A mid-range burst fire rifle with a DPS of 63 at base with no burns. Its full-off range is 20 to 56 meters, and here's some burst math. Considering 7 doesn't do much weapon damage, this is still a pretty nice feeling weapon to shoot. Paired with its good magazine size, and you have a fairly respectable weapon in the early game. I have a feeling that 7's favorite sport in Lost Whisper was basketball, if they even got time outside, which, to be fair, I'm not actually sure. Why? His first ability, Lightning Ball, would be the answer. 7 shoots out a ball of lightning that travels in a straight line. The ball does damage to all targets in its radius, slows down when damaging enemies, and stops when it hits the world. And here's some balling math. You shoot out a ball, a big ball, a massive ball. You are 7. You do nothing but ball. You are balling. When you're balling so hard, some people want to stop you from balling. That's when 7 makes use of his second ability, Static Charge. 7 applies a charge to an enemy hero. After a short duration, the charge explodes, stunning and damaging enemies in its radius. And here's some static math. Static Charge is a very nice ability to trade with, especially if you can guarantee the stun in a bad position, as it allows you to get in free damage and a lot of it. So when you get that stun and you want to trade hard, that's where 7's third ability, Power Surge, comes in. 7 powers up his weapon with a shock effect that does extra damage and jumps to nearby enemies. This occurs once per burst, and here's some shocking math. The farming button, the free damage button, the Tesla bullets on base kit button. Power Surge is a great ability, and it lasts a freakishly long time too. And when it comes to the big team fight and you need to hit the I win button, that's where 7's ultimate, Storm Cloud, comes into play. 7 channels an expanding storm that damages all enemies within its radius. Enemies do not take damage out of line of sight, and while channeling, 7 can press the fire button to strike an area with a powerful lightning bolt attack. This is limited to once per Storm Cloud cast, and here's some approaching math. 7 becomes the storm that is approaching. Provoking. Black clouds and ice. I'm just gonna stop. You get the idea. 7's ultimate is the scariest thing in this game when he has his core build going and everything is in place for him. And my god, you feel untouchable when you pop this ult. Just, be prepared to get hit with at least 3 different anvils and maybe a Monkril ultimate. Yeah, that's your problem now. So that's 7's abilities, but how do you play 7? So let's start off with the obvious. 7 is a position 1 character, meaning he likes to go into any side lane of no preference. Actually, that's a lie. Preferably want the lane where it has the tier 1 spawn on your side, just to maximize souls, or you just remember your box routes. Mid isn't really the greatest lane for 7 because like any hyper carry, you get stuck in blue lane, bite the bullet, and pray you get an easy matchup because you'll be in for a bad time if not. For the early game, you farm. You don't do much, you don't really interact until you get some abilities online, and you have some AP points in your Power Surge. Surprisingly, with the existence of Static Charge as well, you do have very good trade power, and people don't expect it. You cast a stun and they end up in a bad spot, you get to shoot them for free, or you get to melee them for free, and there is nothing they can do to stop you. Of course, remember that lane is your top priority for farm. Monster Rounds is a very good buy for this reason alone, and extra regen is a very good item in the early game for any character that needs to survive the early game. I have no idea why I wasn't building this sooner on other characters like Wraith and Mina. When factoring in investment power spikes, that's where it turns into a conscious decision, and so it's up to really the person piloting the character. 7 can hold his own and even get ahead in lane when played well. You need to be exceptionally good. You need to be better than your lane opponents in this case normally. His stun and ball combo make for exceptionally good trade power if you don't waste the ball on wave. Same goes for Power Surge, like I said. But with Power Surge lasting for 10 seconds and the cooldown starting as soon as the ability pops, you technically have a 40-second cooldown rather than a 50-second cooldown. That is a massive cooldown to burn, so use it wisely. Your ultimate in lane is mainly used as an anti-dive tool. No one wants to be in the radius of a 7 ultimate at any stage of the game, especially when in line of sight. So it makes for very good disengagement. And finally, don't forget the usual early game, box routes and farm are your best friends. And if you survive them, early game, you'll end up in the mid game. Like every hyper carry, you can choose to perma-farm side lanes with extreme efficiency. Wave, camp, boxes. Everything is yours to claim, unless you got steamrolled in the early game. However, I like to assume you've come up the early game not completely fucked, so if you aren't running down like a zoo animal, you want to immediately get to a side lane and start power farming as much as possible. Clear your wave, clear camps, and get boxes. However, unlike Wraith, you actually have the flexibility to be at mid-game team fights. Stormcloud can guarantee something like an early rift or an early earned skirmish in your favor. Your ability to stun and dish out insane area of effect can actually be incredibly helpful in a fight. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you want to be at a fight, sometimes you don't. It entirely depends on the game state, and it's entirely up to your own discretion. If you get a couple of kills, nice. If things don't go in your favor, and you still end up actually succeeding your objectives, also nice. If things go to shit, run. Your entire job is self-preservation and getting farmed. If you're dead, you can't farm, and you can't get to late game faster. Prioritize your life and your coin. Do this right, and you hit late game. Late game, you ult in the big fight and everyone dies. It's what I would say in an ideal world where no one buys counter items. Realistically, you're rushing unstoppable, and depending on what playstyle you want, you're either laying down balls and more balls paired with a power surge, or you're simply floating around in the air like the angry cloud that you are. You need to pay attention to the items that the enemy builds, as it will prove to be a lifesaver in so many different scenarios. You are one of the strongest characters in the late game and one of the biggest threats in the game at this stage, so you will be targeted a lot. And considering your range and ability to deal massive AoE, it's not stupid to go for you in every situation where it's necessary. And if you're not being peeled by your tank, well, GG's, go next. However, if the enemy burns their key cooldowns and active items, it's free range for you to just pop that ultimate and rain down destruction like Zeus. Do this right, and you'll finish the ritual in no time. And that will neatly lead into what we build on 7. We've discussed how we play 7, but what does one build on 7? Simply put, 7 doesn't build a lot of gun. It's mainly stats from what I've seen in the several builds in the build browser, so I'll list them off. You've got monster rounds and cultists for farming, you know, just the usual hyper carry type build. Monster rounds into a cultist, get into jungle, farm a lot, bada bing, bada boom, big money. Toxic bullets if you feel like a dot and anti-heal, because, you know, a dot and anti-heal is really nice. Or crippling headshot for anti-heal and resistance shred. For 7, the more resistance shred, the better. Spirit shredder or spirit rend if you want to go for a cheap alternative to crippling and you can't aim like me. Ballistic enchantment for balls if you want to spam balls, and the last two I take note of would be spiritual overflow and fleet foot. Like I said, 7 doesn't build too much gun aside from anything involving status affliction or shred. For vitality, or green, as I've been calling it this whole damn time, like any squishy, you are building mainly barriers and other tertiary defense items that isn't the big tank items. Lifesteal too, let's not forget about lifesteal because 7 builds lifesteal a lot. Reactive and indom, the usual suspects for barriers on CC. Indom is incredibly useful for when you don't have unstoppable, but you need to deal with at least one of the anvils being sent your way. So, you know what, thumbs up. Resiliences, Spellbreaker, and the big ones that you must usually buy, which I stated before, unstoppable. Because who would have thought an item that makes you completely immune to CC is a core item on someone like 7, with big ultimates and is usually flying in the air all willy-nilly. You'd be stupid not to build unstoppable if you're going to build alt 7, which most people normally do. Aside from that, you have debuff resistances you can build, but Dispel Magic is a very nice one to pick up considering most characters in this game have some form of debuff or two. And you've got the active item slots, you might as well use them. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Infuser. Considering 7's main crux of damage is Spirit, you're going to be using Infuser quite a bit. Paired with Unstop, you are pretty much untouchable when you build momentum. And then finally, we have Spirit. Most of your damage from this category will come from one very important item that is core to 7's damage: escalating exposure. Considering how fast 7 can 12 stack the amp on this item, you come online pretty quickly afterwards. The other 3 items from what I've seen both playing against and with 7 is duration, range, and cooldown, especially transcendent cooldown, as you are normally building 3 to 4 active items per game. If you want to go more into ball 7, you build charges instead. Refresher is one of those aforementioned active items that you'd build cooldown for, as having 2 storm clouds is incredibly strong, paired with the fact that you also have Infuser, Unstoppable, and maybe Dispel Magic, as I've stated in the other green section. You're gonna have all 4 of your active item slots occupied, so it's great for you to have. Boundless, of course, for the extra raw spirit power, and lastly, Lightning Scroll. It's fucking Lightning Scroll. What else can I say? Oh, and if you feel like building more of a spirit on hit 7, Mercurial Magnum and Surge of Power. Just the same old, throw it on there, bada bing, bada boom, extra spirit on hit damage. Have fun. 7 is a character I can describe in one word. Menacing. He knows what he wants, and he's willing to do anything to achieve his goals. Personally, I don't find 7 to be all that fun, so if you find him fun, more power to you. I've just played enough carry-type characters to realize that 7 isn't really my cup of tea. It's not that he's hard to play or anything like that. I just find the builds he has to be rather uninteresting. It doesn't feel as interactable as Wraith, which is strange for me to say, considering Wraith and 7 are two sides of the same coin, basically. One damaging ability, one self-peel, one big ultimate, and one self-buffing steroid. The difference is, Wraith has a lot more going for her with the teleport and stuff like that. 7 just sometimes feels like an ult bot. He has his, don't get me wrong though about 7, he has his moments, don't get me wrong at all. 7 when ahead is an amazing feeling, and being able to control the pace of a fight is worth a lot more than people think. Do I like 7 any other time? Not really. However, he's an incredibly strong character that's relatively easy to pick up, not so easy to master. So if you like big AoE spirit damage and enough electricity to power a small city, pick up 7 and attain Apotheosis. And with that, I shall leave you all and get back to figuring out which character I want to make a video on next. Thank you all for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video, whatever it might be. Later, goobers. Bye.